If you're joining us for the first time, maybe you're joining us on YouTube, where we are streaming live all week from the International Manufacturing Technology Show. If you're streaming on any of the 43 podcast platforms where you can now find the Tech Ed podcast, welcome. It is great to have you with us. My name is Matt Kirkner. I am your host. And as we said, we are live all week from the International Manufacturing Technology Show, the largest and longest running show of its kind in the entire Western Hemisphere. Our guest today is somebody who travels all over the Western Hemisphere and all over the Eastern Hemisphere in his role as the sales manager, industrial applications, for a company that I think a lot of our listeners today are probably familiar with, Boston Dynamics. If you're not familiar with Boston Dynamics, I'm sure you're familiar with Spot the Robot. We're going to talk about that a little bit with Caleb Sylvester, again, the sales manager, industrial applications for Boston Dynamics. Caleb, thanks for joining us on the Tech Ed podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And we are happy to have you here as well. And tell us a little bit, Caleb, if you would, about Boston Dynamics, about your robotics platforms. What's your company's mission? What's your vision? What's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, so, Boston Dynamics is, we're obviously known for our, we're obviously known for our YouTube videos and just the sort of inspiring robots that we've been building and working on the challenge of legged robotics. So that's really our passion is mobile robots that can do really interesting things in the world, go where traditional robots can't go, do things traditional robots can't do. So we're really pushing the envelope of what's possible with robots, especially legged robotics.
Awesome. So the pushing the envelope indeed, and I think we're going to talk about Spot the Robot, which is a way in which you push the envelope, but really such an interesting focus on a really, I don't want to say narrow area of robotics, but this legged robotics area is really interesting. I actually saw, I believe it was your founder, maybe speaking at Automate earlier this year. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
that's right. What's that gentleman's name?
Yeah, Mark Rabert.
Mark Rabert. Yeah, he was awesome. I mean, just fantastic, and had just a really personal presentation, showing pictures of his house, showing pictures of Spot the Robot kind of running around the house. I think he had like a greenhouse there, and it was just absolutely beautiful property. But a real dynamic speaker, pardon the pun, really interesting speaker. You've gained a ton of fame, Boston Dynamics has, for a number of things, but I think many of our listeners are probably most familiar with the RoboDog Spot.
Yep.
And if you're like, oh, I know I saw that, but I can't remember where I saw it, you probably saw it in the Sam Adams commercial.
That's right.
In the 2022 Super Bowl last year, I guess earlier this year, where Spot the Robot was taught to dance like Mick Jagger. I think was it Maroon 5 actually that had the Mick Jagger Dance Like Mick Jagger song? I forget. And I'm looking at our producer Melissa, and I'm not sure she knows either.
Yeah.
But anyway, tell us about Spot. All these countless videos, all the activity on YouTube, social media, and so on. Tell us about Spot.
Yeah, Spot is a quadruped robot, meaning it's moving through the world on four legs. Excuse me. Moving through the world on four legs as opposed to traditional tractor-wheeled robots. It possesses something we call athletic intelligence.
Okay.
Which means it's able to understand what's happening in the world around it in real time and react and place its feet in really intentional ways to stay upright, stay balanced, and that enables it to go where humans can go, and go where and oftentimes where humans shouldn't go. So it's really unique as a platform. It weighs about 70 pounds. So it's about the size of a German Shepherd.
Okay.
But and it can carry about 30 pounds. So it's a unique platform that it has really a special way about how it's able to move through the world autonomously, and through remote operation. So it definitely is opening up a lot of doors with what might be possible if you have a robot that can go where people can go and carry 30 pounds worth of payloads.
Yeah, absolutely. We first of all, it kind of takes on a personality of its own. I've seen videos of people like trying to push Spot over, and it's a robot, but you still kind of feel sorry for it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that was something we learned along the way, is that people see these lifelike robots and they associate it to what they know in the real world. So it's and a lot of our robots were designed by watching how animals move through the real world, animals and humans move through the real world. And
it really kind of depersonalizes, or maybe personalizes and destigmatizes the whole idea that people have around robots. Now they can kind of relate to Spot the Robot. They understand that this is a tool to help make your life better. It's help us do all kinds of interesting things, all kinds of crazy things, and really improve lives rather than, kind of we're getting away from that old idea that robots are going to take jobs or that we should be threatened by them. So credit to you and to Boston Dynamics and the entire research and development team there for creating something that I think not just has a really, really useful purpose, but also does a great job of evangelizing, if you will, for this whole idea of robotics.
Yeah, it's only going to get better, really, in terms of how robots interact with humans in the real world. There's a really important field, human-robot interaction, a lot of times referred to as HRI, and it's something that we're seeing grow in terms of just the need for it and the awareness of it, and the sort of user experience, if you will, of what it means to interact with a robot in the real world. It's definitely you'll start to see more really intentional things coming in our robots and other robots that sort of allow people to understand what this robot is doing and how they should interact with it.
HRI, human-robot interaction. I like that. As we sit here at the International Manufacturing Technology Show, lots of things like collaborative robots, where now you're seeing people and robots working side by side, working hand in hand, and certainly Spot is a great example of that, full of artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. You use the term athletic intelligence, and so I want to go a little bit deeper on that. When I think of AI or ML, artificial intelligence or machine learning, actually gave a presentation just yesterday at the Top Shops Expo for Modern Machine Shop, where we talked all about how artificial intelligence and machine learning and various classifications of, whether it's reinforcement machine learning. We talked quite a bit about transfer learning, classification learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning. I've got to believe just about all these technologies alive and well on Spot. So talk, if you would, about the artificial intelligence and the machine learning engine behind what we see in Spot the Robot.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Spot doesn't learn in the way you might think it learns. Its artificial intelligence is really in its ability to navigate a real world environment. It's not an unsupervised learning model where it's seeing an environment and kind of tweaking its algorithms based on that. That's not really how Spot moves through the world. The kind of the brilliance of Spot is that it's sort of a roaming IoT platform. So It's designed to go and get really repeatable, structured data that our customers can then use as their ground truth data to start building their models. So many of our customers are being mandated, hey, you got to move to Industry 4.0, and practically what that means is you need a lot of data to build algorithms to understand what's happening in your facility. Spot is this incredible tool that actually, really intelligently goes and gets that data. And so what I'm really excited about is yes, there's some incredible things happening with AI and robots, and you may have saw the recent news that we're actually launching an institute that's really kind of focused on, making robots more intelligent from an artificial intelligence perspective. But what I'm really excited about with Spot is it unlocks the ability for our customers to build the AI that they need to understand what's going on in their plant. And so if you think about Spot, it's sort of a bridge between needing to get data and sensors that collect data, and the algorithms that you need to analyze that data, trend that data, and make predictions about what's going to happen in your facility.
I think you make a couple interesting points before we get any deeper into that. So this institute that you mentioned, did you name the institute yet? Where is it going to be? What kind of research and work is it doing?
Yeah, so I to be totally candid, I'm not able to go into too much detail there. But it was. You're
not going to have any breaking news here on the Tech Ed podcast and
no,
IMTS. Come on, Caleb.
Unfortunately, that's not my role. But our founder Mark Raybert is announcing this initiative, where we're establishing an office in Massachusetts and staffing it up pretty aggressively to really, right now I believe the name is the Boston Dynamics Institute, AI Institute.
Okay, great.
But I might have that slightly off.
Sure.
But the idea is, a group that's really fully dedicated to solving some of the really hard challenges that no one's solved yet. And that's really kind of where we've, made a name for ourselves, is we're building things that just have never existed, solving problems that no one's been able to figure out. And we're just staying sort of really active in that type of mentality. We have established commercialized products now that are fantastic that we're selling in the world, but we also want to continue this like really aggressive R&D effort.
And clearly, you've created an incredible track record for aggressive research and development. So we'll look forward to whatever comes from and whatever you end up calling it. But the Boston Dynamics Artificial Intelligence or AI Institute or whatever the name ultimately ends up being, more and more innovation on the way, and we're looking forward to that. You also mentioned this whole idea of a lot of your clients being pushed toward Industry 4.0, connected systems, Internet of Things, whatever it is that we want to call it. We see the same thing, and especially in the manufacturing realm, which is obviously where Industry 4.0 got its start and is probably making the greatest progress. One of the things that we talk with manufacturers and with industrial employers, industrial companies about a lot is, look, don't just set out on this Industry 4.0 journey. You don't wake up one morning and say, hey, by the end of the year, we're going to be Industry 4.0, right? It's really got to be, at least in my opinion, about a business case. And we cited in the presentation I did yesterday, actually, some work by Dr. Jay Lee, who's the vice chairman of Foxconn, largest contract manufacturer in the world, and he leads Foxconn AI, which is their artificial intelligence arm, wrote a whole book called Industrial AI. He literally wrote the book on artificial intelligence in industry. It reads like a textbook, so it's not like if you're familiar with The Goal and you love The Goal with Alex Rogo and Herbie, 30 years ago. That's not this book. It reads like a textbook. Yeah. But what he says is, when data scientists come into industry, they first ask, where's the data? Give us all your data. And then they try to figure out what to do with the data. He said it's really about, what problems do we want to solve with Industry 4.0? How are we going to drive continuous improvement through a manufacturing operation using all of that big data? So I'd be interested in maybe staying on this topic of Spot the dog. When you deploy Spot in a manufacturing and an industrial environment, give us some of the use cases that your customers have made for deploying that technology and what benefit they're getting from it.
Yeah, this is the life I live. This is the stuff I chew on every day. So I'm excited to talk about it. We're seeing a few different really interesting deployments. If you think about that push to get data and that need to understand what's happening, how do I predict it, how do I prevent it, what are my prescriptions for let's say eliminating downtime on a particular canning line or something like that. The robot becomes this really compelling tool because your options are to send a human to go get that data, humans that are busy doing really valuable tasks, or fix sensors to that equipment, which if you've got, most of these facilities, the scale of them is so incredible. You're talking thousands of pumps, motors, bearings, compressors, all this stuff, all this equipment that has to be looked at, gauges, and, so where Spot is able to really solve a problem is you can take one sensor, attach it to the back of this robot, sort of a mount and move type of scenario, where now the sensor is mobile and it's autonomous and it's able to go get the data that you need. And so the use cases that we're seeing being really, really popular are thermal inspection, especially on pumps, motors, bearings. Being able to set thresholds and use AI to detect regions of interest and essentially catch anomalies, where you can start to trend out what's a healthy motor look like? How do we get a motor to last its full life cycle rather than dying, a year into its use when it's supposed to last 3 years?
Right.
And now you've got a $50,000 motor you've got to replace. So being able to understand that data, track that data, and then fix that problem before it goes down and is too expensive or causes downtime, which is the worst case scenario. Another one we're seeing is compressed air leak detection. Mm-hmm. So, there's an energy crisis in the world, and people are doing everything they can to find those areas where they're consuming too much energy. Air leaks is a huge culprit of that. Most plants, take a typical automotive plant with just thousands of miles of compressed air lines, and how do you detect those leaks so that you proactively, there are leaks you can't hear or see.
Right.
So we use a sensor from a company called Fluke. It's the SV600. I was just with those guys in Belgium about 2 weeks ago. And it's an incredible device. And when you attach it to Spot, now you have this roaming air leak detector.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool. And so we're seeing things like that. We're seeing a lot of just traditional computer vision applications.
Sure.
Where the robot is going to go out, collect a bunch of image data, video data, and then analyze that, inference that on the edge to look for things like 5S boards, which are ubiquitous in most manufacturing facilities. Someone has to look at a 5S board to make sure the tools are there.
Right.
Spot can do that.
Yeah.
All sorts of different visual detections that someone transforming an analog gauge to a digital readout.
Mm-hmm.
Something someone's doing. People are walking around looking at gauges, and it's a dull sort of job that is not. It doesn't. It takes a lot of time and doesn't produce a lot of results, but it needs to be done.
Sure.
So think of Spot as sort of this roaming data collection platform, and that we can attach any sensor to. It's pretty interesting.
I'm just loving this conversation, as our listeners well know, and perhaps you do, perhaps you don't. I spent the better part of my career in the world of manufacturing. Yep. So I led 3 manufacturing companies, serve on the boards of several now. I serve on the board of a private equity group, and we make investments in small to mid-sized manufacturing companies. That's where I live. That's what I love. And what I really love is driving performance and figuring out how we take a company that's performing at one level and find ways to create an entirely different level of performance, and especially on the operations side, where it's amazing how many opportunities you have in literally any manufacturer to drive exponential growth, exponential performance using this kind of technology. So as you're going down this road of talking about, I can just see it. I'll give you an example. I led the largest contract metal finishing operation in North America for about 10 years. It was a spin-off of Rockwell Automation. Absolutely gigantic. We plated 16,000 different SKUs, believe it or not. So
Amazing.
Think about all the different variables, 16 automated production lines. And one of the things that I'm not sure you touched on, but I think is really interesting is, and I saw it in a video of Spot, we would have people, not just the inefficiency of walking around and doing titrations and taking samples and checking meters and all these other things. It's not just the inefficiency of that, but I'll be honest with you, the worst call I ever got one night, it was 2 a.m, my phone rang next to my bed. I knew it wasn't good news. Yeah. And one of our maintenance technicians hadn't used the right fall protection, and it actually slipped into a 200-degree soak tank.
Oh, no.
About to his knees, a little bit higher, so he survived it, but it was a long road back for that guy. Now you've got this technology, right, that in terms of promoting safety in times where we would otherwise have maybe put somebody in harm's way or potentially in harm's way. Is that another great application for Spot?
It is. Just the... in a typical, say, food and beverage factory, you've got, the risk of ammonia leaks.
Sure.
Right? That's a big one. You've got, maybe in a semiconductor plant, you've got various chemicals that are hazardous. So you have these scenarios where a human has to suit up and takes time, and it's risky. Nuclear power plants are a place where we have a lot of robots at the moment. So there's so much opportunity to take a robot that can go where that human can go. It can go up and down stairs. It can step across graded floors and catwalks and navigate obstacles. And so it's able to quickly get into a location where a human shouldn't be, collect the necessary data, and get back out. And then now you haven't risked the life of a human. You haven't had as much downtime trying to deal with the scenario, waiting on people to suit up and make sure that it's safe and things like that. And you send the robot in, and even with our manipulator arm, when you're in that scenario and you need to turn a valve or pull a lever, you have that capability.
You have one of the coolest jobs I think that anybody could have, right? If you're in industrial business development, number one, working around this amazing technology. Number two, working with really, really outstanding and innovative customers. And number three, the business case for what you're doing. I know it takes really talented people like yourself to make the case for this type of technology. But once you get in front of a customer with that message, it's got to almost sell itself, doesn't it?
It's a really beautiful thing to see. People are just generally really interested in Spot and seeing it in their environment and sort of testing it out and finding the use case. But when we're there and we're doing sort of like, maybe a proof of concept or a pilot project, and you see something happen where, like, for instance, one of my customers here in North America, their goal is to just significantly reduce the amount of time their technicians are inspecting.
Sure.
So they just want to make the shift. They're spending about half their time inspecting, half their time fixing.
Okay.
They want to reduce that 50% down to say 10%.
Sure.
So, and the idea being, I have these highly skilled laborers. I want them doing the thing they're best at,
right.
the thing they enjoy doing. And so when we see that actually happening, where the robot is allowing sort of that value-added time for the inspector, or excuse me, for the technician, and you see that the light bulbs sort of go on, and the excitement around, hey, we're operating at a more efficient clip. We're preventing downtime. We're fixing things that need to be fixed sooner, and we're able to reallocate these humans to more valuable tasks. It's exciting. It's really, it's rewarding to see it play out.
And it's both. And I spent a lot of time in business development over my years, and there was nothing more rewarding than actually having a solution that makes somebody's life better, that helps them accomplish a goal, and that makes getting up in the morning and developing new customers and new relationships worth it all. And you feel like you're doing good, right? You feel like you're doing important work.
And it doesn't hurt that it's a really cool robot.
Right, exactly. It doesn't hurt that it's a really cool robot. So while we're talking about this whole idea of having an incredible job, having a career that you find so rewarding, lots of really rewarding careers on the technology side as well, not just the business development side. I want to dive into that a little bit. We had Damon Provost, who leads the University of Michigan Robotics Institute, on the podcast earlier this year, maybe last year, and he talked all about these careers as roboticists, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a word that maybe some people aren't familiar with, but Boston Dynamics employs tons of engineers and roboticists that are developing these cutting-edge solutions. So what kind of skills and character traits are important on the technical side for people doing that kind of work?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we're definitely navigate to our website, look at our jobs board, keep an eye on it. We're constantly looking for really talented people. It really depends on which area you're going to focus on, but a really good entry point is a role that we call field applications engineer.
Okay.
It's a really kind of a growing need, and that's a person who's really sort of boots on the ground with the customer, helping them to deploy the robot, helping to set up networking, teach the robot its autonomous paths, do simple programming. And the typical sort of skill set there is usually somebody with a computer science degree or a mechanical engineering degree, and then they're blending. If they're on the ME side, they're learning Python. If they're on the computer science side, they're learning CAD, and they're sort of cross training and becoming better at these skills. But that's a really exciting way to enter into our company, because you're hands-on with the robot. You're getting to go out in the field and see how the customer is using the robot, and it's one of those ones where you get to learn a lot about. You get to take the skills you've been developing and for your degree, and you really do some practical stuff that sort of has that great entry level role in our company, and then go from there. And that could be, people who are focused on vision systems, autonomy, controls engineers. There's stuff kind of for everyone. Even machinists, of course. We have our own machine shop where we do a lot of really incredible stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity.
I didn't realize. So here at IMTS, obviously seeing all the technology, you've got your own machine shop, and you've got tremendous manufacturing capability. We'll stay on the topic just for a moment on the engineering side, and you touched on what I think is a trend that people are just starting to realize, and that's this whole idea of what we call the IT-OT convergence, or the convergence of operations technology and information technology. And when you think about it, you talk about a manufacturing engineer who's learning Python, which would be traditionally kind of a computer science role, and you've got I think you said a computer scientist who's learning CAD and understanding mechanical design and so on. There really is this convergence of these different roles, which I think is really interesting. If you're deciding to be a manufacturing engineer, that's not a life sentence, right? You've got all these opportunities to move in different directions, and so I think that part of the whole world of manufacturing and engineering and development is fascinating. The IT-OT convergence. And then getting back to this topic of you've got your own machining operation. I've got to believe as advanced as your technology is on the robotics side, you've got advanced machining capability. We're here at the International Manufacturing Technology Show. Have you had a chance to walk around at all?
I have, yeah. We have some customers here and some partners. So I made a point to go and check on those folks. We have a few people who brought their Spot robots to the show.
Excellent.
Up at there's a booth for Leica. We have a really close partnership with them where Spot is integrated to their LiDAR scanning platforms. So Spot is essentially being used to autonomously build digital twin, which is pretty cool
really
use
cool,
case.
Yeah.
And then similar with Faro, laser scanning, same exact use case. So both of those. And there's another company I'd heard that they maybe brought a robot, but Nexa 3D. It's a 3D printing company.
I know them well. You bet.
Who's been really looking at Spot in some really kind of innovative ways. I'll let them tell that story, but that there's a few like that, but that's probably pretty much the extent of what I've seen so far.
Okay, yeah, I've been so busy in the booth, we haven't had a chance to walk around yet, but I'm really looking forward to spending some time with so many of our partners, and I love hearing about all these use cases for Spot. The imagination runs wild, doesn't it?
It does. It's incredible. I even have one manufacturer in Texas using the robot as a sort of a perimeter security robot to check several things around their sort of fence line. So there's all sorts of really interesting ways you could go. I think the lowest hanging fruit tends to be sort of that condition monitoring. Everyone is trying to learn more about what's happening in their facility. Spot solves a really interesting problem there.
Solving plenty of really interesting problems. I've got two questions in the time we have remaining, which is about a minute or so. So we'll kind of pack them both into one question. My first question, Caleb, is talk briefly about your education pathway and how it led to the role that you have. And then secondly, we're going to ask you if you have one piece of advice for a high school sophomore. What would that piece of advice be?
Oh man, wow. So my path is a non-traditional one. I studied public relations at a small liberal arts school.
Which one?
School? College of the Ozarks.
Okay,
and down in Southwest Missouri.
You bet.
It's called Hard Work U. Was the mantra, but essentially you work and attend courses at the same time. You work on campus and sort of work off your tuition.
Love
it's
it.
an interesting model, but. So from there, I was really intrigued by the startup world and just got into a couple different startups really early on in my career. Mostly software development, mostly focused around payment processing, and specifically for online donations, which was kind of a weird niche.
Sure.
Fast forward, I ended up at a company in South Florida. Called Levitas, and at that company, they're actually a really close partner of Boston Dynamics. And at that company, I helped to build out the data science machine learning practice.
Okay.
And we were working with a who's who of Fortune 100 companies, really early on in the sort of machine perception days. And so that's really where I started to transition into sort of big data and ML. I'll speed this up, and then
it's such a fascinating background. You're going all day, right?
Yeah, so that's what led me to Spot. Is we were looking for a way to get cameras into a nuclear power plant.
Okay,
and there was just no way to do it, and Spot was the only option. So we were actually I was a customer of Boston Dynamics before I was an employee.
And here you are responsible for global business development for that organization. One piece of advice for a high school sophomore before we sign off?
Yeah, so a high school sophomore, don't hesitate to jump into STEM program. There's just so many cool things and so many high schools now are really emphasizing STEM.
It's great to see.
Yeah, let's get more people into the STEM programs. Join that robotics team. I can't emphasize it enough. we need more engineers. We need more people focused on science and technology. And so that's it. And I preach it to my own kids. Is there's so many things you can even learn on your own, and then there's this incredible amount of programs and resources available.
Let's get more people into STEM programs. We're glad that we got Caleb Sylvester into the Tech Ed podcast booth this morning at the International Manufacturing Technology Show here in Chicago.
Thanks so much,
Illinois. Man. Yeah, Caleb, it was great having you with us. He is the sales manager for industrial applications for Boston Dynamics. I'm Matt Kirkner. Thanks so much for being with us on the Tech Ed podcast.
Thanks, Matt.